There's a lot going on in this movie.
It was like I was watching it for the first time.
I like this movie.
It has a special place in my heart.
Very close to my heart.
This was a good one.
I want to like this movie.
What? Seriously?
I loved it.
Very flat, kind of boring.
This movie blows me away. This movie turns me on.
Terrible. It is terrible. All these keys everywhere. Influences, baby.
Huge, huge fan.
That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
Hello and welcome out there in podcast and YouTube land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, a YouTube channel and podcast where two guys get together. We talk about horror movies, science fiction movies, sometimes television, key influences on that particular topic of the week, and then things that topic ended up being key influence of. We've been doing it for quite a few years now. This is like our 7th season. And if you're just joining us, we would love to know how you found out about us. So leave us a comment down below and let us know how you found us. And if you're rejoining us, you know what we do and how we've been doing it. We are completely unscripted. Sometimes we don't even know what we're going to say ourselves, let alone what we're going to say to each other. But before I drone on too much, let me introduce Tim, my co-conspirator in this wonderful, wacky world. Tim, how you been? What have you been doing?
Oh my goodness, what have I been doing? Well, we usually like to break the ice with a little conversation topic that we call our genre week, something that we may have watched or read or what have you in our genre of choice. I happened to watch a documentary that I saw on Shudder called King on Screen.
Ooh, okay.
I think I told you not too long ago about another docuseries I watched that had an episode. I can't remember which docuseries it was. That had an episode on Stephen King movies. And I said it wasn't long enough, but I needed to do more because you just can't cover them all in an episode.
Right.
Well, you can't cover them all in a movie either.
You need a series.
Yeah, you need an entire series to devote to it, I guess. This movie features a slew of directors commenting on their contributions to King's oeuvre.
Oh, okay.
Some probably best forgotten. Do we really need to hear from Mark Lester, the director of Firestarter?
No,
Probably not.
at all. Nope. Or the remake. Yep.
The remake guy also directed The Vigil. He's actually a little better known than Mark Lester. So it begins with this very indulgent, lengthy, and ultimately boring cavalcade of King references dramatized.
Okay.
And I think the woman walking through the store and seeing all these King references or whatever it is, like, I think she's the director. That's why I say it was indulgent.
Okay.
It is worth watching overall, ultimately, for some of the contributors, one of whom is Frank Darabont and one of whom is Mike Flanagan.
Okay.
So it's got its good things and it's got its bad things. The woman I mentioned, her name is Daphne Baiwir, Baiwir. She has also done a Hitchcock documentary that I have not seen.
Okay.
Its contributors are stars Josh Boone, Mick Garris, Tom Holland, Frank Darabont, Mike Flanagan, among others. Synopsis: since 1976, more than 50 directors have adapted the works of author Stephen King for the screen. The filmmaker explores the work of these directors, their adaptations, and their sources. Granted, some are dead, but she doesn't even talk to half that many. So that's why I'm saying that you need more than one movie if you're going to do something like this. It only scores 65% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I kind of agree with that. I just was not that impressed with this documentary, aside from those two contributors I mentioned.
Okay.
So there you go. I don't need to hear Mark Lester talk about Firestarter.
Was King in it at all?
No.
Oh, interesting. Because I know in some of the behind the scenes that I've seen of other movies, he'll talk about, they'll have like a little snippet of him talking about his reaction to the film or whatever.
Well, if they did, it was taken from something else. It was not something
Right.
he personally contributed to this film. No.
Okay.
Like they may show a cut from him at a lecture or something, but that's
Yeah.
he's not in it.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's what I did in my genre week. I went down the Stephen King road.
Okay. Well, I think if I remember correctly, last time what I had finished was his short story collection. That's what I had done the last time. But we recently covered Winter Soldier, and it made me want to then force myself to watch a Marvel movie that I never really liked much, even though I've seen it twice before. So I rewatched Civil War, which is not one of my favorite Marvel films, and it's a Captain America it's my favorite franchise part of the MCU. But I've never really liked that movie. So I thought, okay, I'm going to watch it again with the eye of why don't I like this movie? Is there something wrong with the pacing of it? Is there something wrong with the storytelling or whatever?
It's funny. I almost did that, but I didn't.
It's directed by the Russos again, Anthony and Joe. It's written by Christopher Marcus, Stephen McFeely, Joe Simon, a lot of the other writers that worked on Winter Soldier and also worked on a couple of other later MCU projects. And it's basically a huge linchpin in that era of the MCU because it basically splits the Avengers apart. And not just the Avengers, these new added characters that have come on from other franchises.
Like
It introduces, well, Spider-Man, it introduces us to a character named Black Panther. It introduces Romlo, who was the guy who was burned and hurt in Winter Soldier, the guy that attacked Cap in the elevator, is like a superhero in it with a super suit and everything else. We get to
Ant-Man's
see
in it, isn't he?
Ant-Man, Rhodey. We get to see Vision actually do something post-Ultron. So,
Yeah, he picks a side.
yeah,
Vision
and
does.
Wanda does as well. So and it's very interesting because it's so divisive, but so much happens. It's the whole Sokovia Accords, and that sets up the whole last part of the MCU franchise. And it introduces Zemo, who comes in later on in Falcon and Winter Soldier, the TV series. And so there's a lot that happens in it and a lot of backstory and a lot of stuff, but it just doesn't work for me. And I finally found out, or finally rationalized, I think the reason it doesn't work for me is because I don't like to see my protagonists become antagonists in general. I don't mind if a villain does something in a franchise, if a villain does something humanistic or altering or changes not becomes the good guy, but does something worthwhile or good. I don't mind that in any franchise. Like Snape in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, the whole franchise, Snape is portrayed as a bad guy all the way through it. And then he has a redemption arc in the last few movies. So I don't mind that, but I don't like the reverse. I don't like seeing Tony suddenly become this big government shill and yelling at everybody else and fighting with Cap and starting this huge, essentially civil war with the other superheroes because they won't sign the Sokovia Accords. And it really bothers me all the way through it that Tony Stark becomes this just bastard all the way through it. He always was a jerk.
I was going to say, he's always been an anti-hero, though, really.
I don't mind him being a jerk to the bad guys, and I don't even mind him having little quips and fights with the rest of them, whether it's talking to Banner going, and I really like the fact that you turned into a green rage monster, or fighting with Cap in Avengers. He goes, you take away the metal suit, and what are you? And he goes, oh, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. And he keeps telling Cap he'll go toe-to-toe with him and all. I don't mind that bravado, that Tony's always had. But in this, he gets really petty, and he literally wants to kill Captain America because he's keeping him from killing Bucky because Bucky killed his dad. And it seems like forced to me and pushed. And also, I think the fights in this look very comic booky to me. And I know that sounds weird because the MCU looks like a comic book all the way through it, come to life. But that whole...
It is a comic book.
But the whole, at the airport, and they're literally in lines, lined up on each side, is just like the center part of a comic book. You know,
it's actually, I think the cover, I'm not certain, but I think I've seen a picture of the cover. And
yeah,
it's like
and what do they call it? A one sheet or a whatever, but it's the one big tableau of all of them lined up on each side, and Rhodey and Iron Man are floating over here, and Vision's floating over here. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, fine, great. Plus the fact that I don't like Ant-Man, and he has a big role in this, so...
He comes Giant Man.
So anyway,
Goliath.
Captain America's Civil War is not one of my favorite MCUs. It's just not. But I rewatched it and tried to analyze it for David, why are you so particular about not liking this? So there's that.
Oh, okay.
That's
Well,
what I did in my fun week.
You talk about Civil Wars.
Yep.
I talked about Stephen King.
Yep.
Stephen King once said that the topic of today was the most ferociously original horror movie he'd ever seen. And that one little quote launched this film into the stratosphere.
Yep.
And within this film, there's quite a war going on inside a little cabin. It's called The Evil Dead. It came out in 1981, and... You and I both know that it was filmed in like 79 or 80. It took a long time to come out. I remember that.
It was filmed in 79, November and December of 79. Yep.
And I guess before we get into our history with this film, because as I said the first time around when we did this, I feel like this movie's in my DNA. And I don't know that it's because of proximity, because it was filmed down the road from my house, or that you were involved with it. I just feel like the horror in this movie works with me. That's why it is, I feel very close to it. The synopsis is really easy. Basically, you've got Ash Williams and his girlfriend Linda go to spend a weekend with friends and his sister Cheryl in a cabin in the woods. And they find a tape recorder and a book that looks like it's made of human flesh with really weird drawings in it. And they resurrect the Kandarian evil of the woods or whatever. And each one of them succumbs to it eventually, becoming a zombie, very much like the one in the picture behind me. And instead of a final guy or final girl, there's a final guy in this one. And it's Bruce, the guy that plays Ash Williams.
Yep.
And that's it, really. It's extremely gory, extremely violent, extremely scary. I think this movie's still really scary, especially if you showed it to a kid that had never seen it before, I'm sure.
Yeah. You say it's part of our DNA, and I really think you're right, because he tapped into this almost like Romero did with Night of the Living Dead, in this reinvention of zombies and making zombies these flesh-eating, slow, always coming at you. The Deadites, it's not that they're slow, but they're these merciless, unstoppable people that you used to know that are now possessed by these demons. So it's almost like you had a bunch of Reagans from...
The Exorcist.
From The Exorcist, but they want to hurt you.
They're zombies, and they talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big difference right there, is that they talk.
And I'm curious that, because I can't remember, even doing research this time, I can't remember seeing an interview with Sam or Rob or Bruce where they call them zombies. They do refer to them as Deadites, but they don't call them zombies.
And did they always call them Deadites? Did they do that when you were working on the film?
No. They had
Because I
they
think
were
that term came later.
yeah, I think it came after the third one. That's
Okay.
when they really referred to them as Deadites, because I
Okay.
think even Ash in that calls them the Deadites.
Army of Darkness. Okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe one of those medieval people call them that.
But no, even on set and everything else, they were just called the possessed or the demons.
Okay.
So they didn't refer to them as undead or zombies or anything like that. So, but what he created is really a scary, scary, scary type of evil and villain, and the way he did it with the breakneck speed and the camera photography and everything not stopping. There's no breaths. It's just relentless. And
Yeah,
so,
it's a good word.
and it's created this huge franchise that has been reinvented over and over again.
I don't think that any of them come anywhere near the first one, with exception to the reboots. When you get to the 2013 ones and then Evil Dead Rise, I think they get back to the original because Sam kind of went left into comedy land with it. And that's unfortunate because I think this is a really scary movie. I don't like it to be that funny.
Yeah. Well, and we talk about keys and key references. Of course, you can't have keys that are a franchise without the ones that come after it. And the second one is basically just a reboot of this one. It's just literally a retelling of the same story. And I don't think it's as good as this one.
I
And
know,
Evil
and
Dead,
yet it's more popular.
yeah. And Evil Dead 3, like you said, Army of Darkness, is more comedy than it is scary. It does have some scary moments to it and some gore.
Well, and it's
But
not
it
really a
is-
horror movie. It's almost
No.
a sword and sandal movie.
Yeah, sword and
It's
sandal
just like an
comedy,
adventure.
really. I watched a few episodes of Ash versus the Evil Dead, and again, it keeps the comedy coming alive.
I honestly don't mind it, though. I think they get a little bit back to the old stuff in Ash versus the Evil Dead.
Yeah.
I had forgotten about that. I watched Evil Dead 2 in preparation for today.
Okay.
And I thought, just like you did with Civil War, I was like, what is it I don't like about this movie? And I was watching it. I was like, this is terrible. It looks as cheap as the first one. It looks like Joe Dante directed it because it's got rubber monsters everywhere that look fake. They don't look real. And the monsters in this, look at that picture behind me, look real.
Well, I think part of that was the fact that it was practical. They were throwing makeup on and putting in eggshells, sclerotic lenses, and it was scary. And but I also think part of the production atmosphere on set added to the horror too of it. It wasn't comfy and cushy. And we've covered other shows where they had struggles on the set, which manifested into telling a really good show. The one that comes to mind is The Thing. And they were talking about all the struggles with the makeup and with the prosthetics and with the creatures and everything in The Thing, and how it led to that paranoia and that energy that I think comes from the film. But then, yeah, I think you're right. It's not until, is it Fede or Fed Alvarez?
Alvarez, yeah.
Alvarez, who really brought it back to scary. Because I do think that reboot of Evil Dead is genuinely scary.
It is. And he goes for the original feel of the movie. There's no comedy in it.
No. And it's these characters, and they're being picked off one by one, and it's gross and violent, like you said. And
Yeah. And a lot of what can be equated with these movies is gore because they are extremely gory, or at least bloody, extremely bloody. But there's a lot of dismemberment. The only way you can kill them is to dismember them. So it has to be gory.
And even then, he establishes in this first movie, the hands will still move, even though they're dismembered and things.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So you...
I know where you're going. We're trying to approach the elephant in the room.
Well, this is a redux. And so anybody out there who's listening to us for the first time, go back to our first season. You can see what we talked about this same movie. So we're redoing it.
It's just not on video. It's on audio only.
Correct. You have to go to the podcast, the original, the OG, as they say, and
with bad sound.
with some there were technical difficulties, yes, in the early years, in the before time. So Tim, we normally say, how did you come to this movie? What was the first time? Do you remember the first time you ever saw this movie?
Well, yeah, I do, but what I was saying is broaching the elephant in the room before we moved to cast and scenes or whatever. I was thinking we need to give our history with it, and you have even more history with it than I do. My history with it is before it came out, we knew it was filming down the road from my house. We would sneak down there and spy on them at night. Sometimes we would go down there in the daytime when they were asleep and look at stuff. So I feel really connected to this movie just because I could actually go on the set when it was being filmed.
Yeah.
As far as the first time I saw it, I went to the premiere, which was at the Capri Cinema, and Bruce and Sam were there. I can't remember if any of the others were there. There was a helicopter there. I remember that. And
Ellen was there.
Was Ellen there? I did not see the first showing because I seem to remember hearing people screaming in the theater because we were waiting to get into the second showing, maybe. Mm-hmm. So that would be my first time ever seeing this. Since then, I've seen it on DVD and video probably 40 times. Easy.
And owned every version of it.
Oh my God, I've got like 3 versions of it now. I've got the one that's the book with the face on it. I've got the deluxe Anchor Bay that's like 3 disc and it's in widescreen and it's got like 3 commentaries. I've got all kinds of shit on this movie. Yeah.
Well, it's an amazing movie, I think, rewatching it this time, just because from the opening shot, it throws you off. It makes you feel uncomfortable because you are going through that fog and up over the swamp and over stumps and flying around, and it's just very chaotic feeling. And yeah, I know it was the late 70s, early 80s. This was before the 80s slashers had really totally taken control, right? When was like Freddy and all
Freddy
that?
wasn't until 84. Halloween was out and Friday the 13th were out. They came out in the late 70s.
Right.
Actually, Friday the 13th came out in 1980. So they were probably filmed at the same time. It's just Sam's didn't come out until late.
And I don't think anybody has caught up with Sam as far as just the visceral camera usage, whether it's Scotch angles or moving camera or going back and forth, just his cinematography, his style, which he carried on to Spider-Man. Sam has gone on to do big, huge studio gags.
Well, he did the last Doctor Strange movie, too.
Yeah. Multiverse of Madness. So
I will say, as far as you were talking about Sam's signature being his camera stuff, I noticed watching it this time, especially this one and the second one, the sound in these movies are incredible. They are what make the movies. They're almost like a character in themselves. I say there, but I'm talking about all the various different sounds because he amplifies things. And I don't know, the sound editing in these movies is just very impressive to me.
well, and he'll use sound as a jump scare too, where suddenly that chain sounds so loud, or the banging on the thing on the trap door, and Bruce has to swing around, and the camera swings with him.
Or the pendulum of the clock.
So loud,
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point, that it's just all these elements came together, which when we were shooting it is amazing that it all came together. The first time I ever saw it was in a theater. I did not go to the premiere, though. I was working or out of town or something, so I didn't see the premiere with you or with anybody else, but I did see it in a theater probably like 2 months later and was blown away, going, wow. And I get a sickening little pride, because even when I was doing research on this, I IMDb'd, and the first image that came up is the leaves with all the red and the smoke coming out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going, that's my board. That's me right there. I'm blowing that fog machine right there. And it made me so happy. I was like, so yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know and are listening, yes, this was filmed in Morristown, Tennessee. If you're an Evil Dead fan, I'm sure you already know that. Morristown, Tennessee is my hometown. And Tim, it's not your hometown, but it is your
I lived there for about 15 years.
15 years. Town of youth, so to speak. And it was not only filmed in my hometown, it was filmed on my best friend's property. So the cabin was located on Win Thompson, his father, Pete Thompson's property, and Wynn and I both got to be, quote, fake shimps on it. So we were production assistants and gaffers and carpenters and anything else that they would let us do, just because we, like Sam and Rob and Bruce, wanted to get into the movie business. Mm-hmm. And it suddenly came to our town. So it was fated and really cool and really neat. And we didn't see it for 2 years, and we're very pleased when it finally came out.
We were all really waiting for it to come out. I remember that. Yeah. I have questions that I can't remember if you answered in the first one, but how did they find the cabin, and how did they find that it was owned by Wynn's dad?
They were going to film originally somewhere in Michigan because
Right.
they're from Michigan, but it was winter, it was getting cold, and they had to delay for a few reasons. I think it was a funding issue because, well, pre-production for this, these were all a bunch of high school and college friends who were making movies just like we did, just like Steven Spielberg did, just like Joe Dante did. You hear about all these people that grabbed a camera and went and played. Mike Flanagan, same way. People shooting on Super 8, people shooting on 16 millimeter. And they had done a few lengthy shorts, 30, 35-minute films, and decided that they wanted to do a movie. But the only way they could raise money for it, they decided, was to do like a demo, almost like a demo tape was at the time for musicians. They were going to do a demo film. So they were going to do a short. It was called Within the Woods. And in it, Bruce plays the villain. He plays the zombie.
And it's on YouTube. You can watch it. There's some bad copies of it on YouTube.
Yeah, and Ellen is in it, but Ellen's the heroine in it, the typical young girl, and Bruce is the bad guy. I'm pretty sure Ellen is. I remember Ellen being in it.
Yeah, no, I think she is in it. I'm almost certain. I watched pieces of it the other day.
Yeah, and they use that to go out to all of their families and friends and say, give us some money. We need to raise money to do a feature film. And so they raised $90,000 to do this movie, which ended up ultimately, I think, costing like 130 or 150. But they raised 90. But by the time they had all the money and everything together, it was approaching wintertime in Michigan. And they knew that it was probably going to snow between then and the early spring, and they wouldn't be able to shoot until spring. And they wanted to do it while they could. So they started looking around. Tennessee at the time had all of these. This was before everybody decided Atlanta and Georgia would be a great film mecca. Tennessee's film board, the Tennessee Film Commission was the name of it, and was actively looking for movies to shoot in Tennessee. So they were out going everywhere, sending emails and letters and advertising and saying, come to Tennessee, we'll give you tax credits, we'll give you easy payments, all this stuff.
Is that why I got a couple of film jobs when I was there in the 80s? It must have been.
Yep, same way. They were giving all these huge perks to companies and studios that would film in Tennessee. And later on, North Carolina took that over, and then it all moved to Georgia. And that's why
it
Walking
went
Dead
to
and everything were there.
Wilmington, North Carolina, and then eventually to Atlanta. That's funny because I never really put that together. Like, because there was a Disney movie I did in Jonesboro, Tennessee, and then I can't remember where King Kong Lives was filmed, somewhere outside of Knoxville.
Right.
I think.
Yep.
Interesting.
But so finishing up, so they finally ended up going to a local realtor here named Gary Holt. He was the He was the realtor who was able to broker a deal with them with Pete Thompson, because Pete had this farmland that had a cabin on it that he wasn't using. He was allowing the farmer next door to keep his cows in there and just use it for whatever. It was basically just a structure.
It was like a shack almost.
Well, it had been a cabin at one point, and it
Right.
did have a chimney and fireplace and all of that, but it was basically very dilapidated and run down, everything else. So they got it for a steal to be able to do it and to come down here. Why? Because Tennessee winters are mild and it'll be easy and it won't be anything compared to Michigan. However, 79 turned out to be one of the worst winters we had had in
It was
years.
really cold.
It was very, very, very cold. And so many things hampered them. They had equipment stolen. They had people injured. It was not the best conditions to shoot a film in. And part
We
of the
didn't
reason
steal anything.
you guys didn't.
No,
Somebody
but I
did.
think I may know some people that did, or at
Right.
least what I heard. Yeah.
And so they rented the cabin, and then they also rented a house. And you don't see this a lot when you look at behind the scenes stuff, because everybody, including Bruce, talks a lot about having to live at the cabin. And a lot of them, yes, did live at the cabin because they were shooting until the sun came up, and then they were
Right.
crashing out for a few hours before they had to shoot again at night. But they had a house with like 4 bedrooms and bathrooms and a kitchen and everything else. It wasn't like they were camping in the woods to shoot this whole movie.
No,
which is,
I remember that house. I think I've driven by that house. It's not
Yeah.
that far away.
no, it was just like 2 blocks away. It was nearby. And that's where we would go when we first started. That's before it got really cold and really under the gun, and there were only a very few of us left survive to shoot the last few shots. That's where Sam one night said, "Hey, you bring all of your movies all of your shorts you've done. I'll bring all mine because I brought them down. We'll watch them together." And we had this huge movie fest, and we watched Within the Woods and Clockwork and 3 or 4 of his other shorts. Rob brought one that he had done with just Bruce and no Sam involved. And we showed all of our high school films and all the stuff that we'd been working on. And it was just really cool because Sam was just a year or two older than me at the time, but had this vision and this dream. And he was so visual, but so difficult for him to describe his vision at the time. Like his storyboards were literally stick figures. Like you would see a stick figure and he would have a circle around the arm with a thing sticking up on it. And you would go, "What is that?" And he goes, "That's Bruce. And he's got a chainsaw." And I was going, "Oh, okay, sure." Sure he does. Yeah, looks just like that. But yeah, I was very lucky to work on that show. And I'm not going to go off on so much of it, but I could tell reams of stories.
And this would be a good chance to point out to people if they want to go to our website and look. There's a podcast archive, and a long time ago we used to do blogs as well. And first season, David wrote his on-set memories of Evil Dead, and you can read all about it there, so that we don't have to talk that much about it.
Yeah, not a lot of them, but a few of them that I had that weren't included in that original podcast. Sam cast it in Michigan. He cast it with a lot of his friends and people he knew, including Bruce, who actually became a producer later on of all the Evil Dead.
I think he had to mortgage his parents' house to get the money to finish the film.
To finish it and do the sound editing, like you said, and finish the editing. But they came down with a crew. They came down with Steve Frankel, who was the carpenter, Bart, I think his name was, I can't remember his last name, but I think Sam called him Dart anyway, who was another production assistant, Goody. I worked a lot with Tom Sullivan because Tom was doing the makeup, and I loved prosthetic makeup. So I worked a lot on the makeup and helping him and making the blood batches and all of that. Josh Becker, if you look up Josh Becker, he had a period when he was really disgruntled from Sam. And I think that's because Sam distanced himself from him for whatever reason. That's personal. I don't want to go into it. But he wrote extensive journal entries of the shooting of Evil Dead and then the aftermath of trying to get a distributor, trying to find it, taking it to con, Stephen King writing about it, all that stuff. And you can find those online. It's really cool. Josh Becker's journals are really cool
Okay.
for a lot of these stories. But yeah, he brought some girls, some guys. They all came to a cabin. It was freezing cold, and you had to put Cairo blood all over yourself.
I was going to say Cara syrup and red food coloring and a cabin so sticky you couldn't walk in it because you would stick to the floor.
Oh yeah, it was a bad movie theater's floor for the entire time, and so cold the last like 2 weeks we were burning furniture in order because they gave up rental on that. Basically, at the end of December, the whole cast left except for Bruce, Rob, the cinematographer at the time, which was Tim, and Wynn and I, and even the girls
Barbara,
left.
right?
Even the girls left. And I was dating a girl named Barbara Sugar at the time, and she ended up filling in for Ellen for shots that they still needed to shoot, that Ellen said, no, I'm going home. I'm done. I'm out, and left.
I thought it was Barbara Carey.
Yeah, that was her original name was Barbara Carey. She got married and she became Barbara Sugar. That was her maiden name.
And how was she related to Dan? Cousin?
Cousin. Yep.
Okay, because I was going to say I knew it wasn't his sister because I knew his sister and brother. Okay.
Yeah.
So I never knew Barbara, but I knew that Barbara played stunt woman to almost all three of the women at some point.
Yes. Yes. All of is it Betsy that's dragged out?
Yes.
That's
well,
all
it's
Barbara.
Linda is her character name. I think Betsy's her name. Yeah.
Yeah. When she's outside,
Betsy.
That's all Barbara in a wig.
When she's getting hit with the big
beam
timber,
and getting her head cut off, and she's grabbing at his leg, pulling his leg out, scratching down his leg. And she was Ellen at another time in the trapdoor, and everything. So,
and I had read when I was doing research this time that what you said is true, that everyone had left, including the principals, except for Bruce. And I thought that must be why they were having to use Barbara to fill in those shots.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And that's why we were doing so much. He was trying to do all the pickups that he possibly could. And that's why we were shooting a lot of the very end of it with Bruce, but a lot of the stuff that's just Bruce.
Yeah.
So that huge run going all the way down to the door, close the door, run, blah, blah, blah. And the camera goes all the way up to his eye. And he's looking around. Shots like that, the last shot, which I have seen, doing research on this one, I saw so many conflicting stories about that last shot. And I was going, no, we did not ride a bicycle through the frickin' house. That did not happen. No, he didn't have a scooter. It was Sam literally holding the 2x4 with the 16 millimeter Bolex on it, and he's running, and we're pulling the doors off their hinges, and we're opening up this, and we're throwing the trap door down, and he's running right up to Bruce's face with the camera. And that's a trivia that we can have in here, which is the shaky cam. Sam essentially invented that. They couldn't afford a steady cam, of course. This was after steady cam had been in film, because it came out in 75 with Rocky and everything. But naturally, they couldn't afford it. They could barely afford the film for the camera that they're doing.
Right.
So Sam invented the shaky cam, which was basically mounting the camera to a huge, long, like 8-foot 2x4. And two guys would hold it, sometimes Wynn and I, sometimes Phil and I, sometimes Bruce and I. And we'd be on each end of it, and you could run, move, play with it. And because it's two of you, you could get a balance, a nice flow to it and everything. But because it's so wide, you could go right over the graves, and you could go around trees and stuff. And so it was the way we did it, and it worked. It worked.
Scenes.
Oh my gosh.
I have so many favorite scenes. I know this movie so well that I can pretty much do all the dialogue with them.
Probably.
But my first favorite scene is this one right here, when Cheryl turns, and it's when they're playing the card game, and Betsy or Linda and I can't remember the other girl's name. Linda and Shelley. She's like guessing what card she's holding, and she's clearly not guessing right, but Linda's lying and saying, oh my God, you got it right. And then all of a sudden, Cheryl in the background starts guessing the cards right. And then she flips around and she's possessed, and you see that face behind me. That's one of my favorite scenes, especially when she floats up and does that weird thing, because that's another thing I don't think he invented it, but you had to have some harness and something outside that window to lift her and make her do that.
Yep. Harness with wood,
Yeah.
and it was essentially a pivot. We just put her
Yeah.
on a pivot because we had experimented with that. They had done it before Wynn and I came to set, but out in front, you see it in the arrival shot and a couple others. There's a tree with like a hollow section in it, almost like where two trunks have grown together and there's a hollow in it. They had put the 2x4 through that. They were going to have her float outside. So, yeah, I agree. That's one of my scenes.
Yeah, I love that scene.
I think the axe scene where both he and Scotty are chopping up
Shelley.
Shelley is one of mine that gets me.
Thank you for pulling me off of those flames. They're burning my beautiful flesh. Except the voice is all gravelly. I can't do that. I like the scene, and I can't remember. I think it's Linda's body, but somebody is dragging a body, and you see the body go across the floor, and as the body passes, Cheryl is in the basement looking out of the thing, and you just see her face there, and she's not even saying anything. That's a great shot. That shot blows me away every time I see it.
There's so many shots in this that are great. That's a great shot. I love the shot that comes outside when he's just looking at everybody. So you've got Ash and his girlfriend in front of the fireplace, but then you go around the building and you're in the other room.
It's all voyeurism. Yeah.
Yeah.
You see everybody inside a window. Yeah.
Yeah, such a cool shot, and something you don't see in Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street or any of those. So it was a different way to do it, which was really cool. And I think when it comes to scenes in this, there's so many that are good, but it's mostly the atmosphere. You can't talk about Evil Dead and not talk about the Cheryl going out into the woods scene because it's iconic to this particular film. I wouldn't say that's necessarily one of my favorite scenes.
No, but it's a great scene because of the way it's shot.
Yeah. Just his photography and the way somebody has a nice little sweet intimate scene, like when he's given the necklace to her and suddenly he does a hard cut to just leaves on the ground and all of a sudden red light starts glowing and you start hearing that sound of it's just the way he does this pacing is just so creepy.
And I don't know if it's true or not, but I read in research that Sam regrets the whole rape scene in the forest. And other people have expressed that they didn't care for it. I think that Ellen actually said, no, it's great. I can't remember if it was her or not. But I think it's great, too. I don't think he needs to regret anything. It's very brutal. And and that one final shot is jarring. But that's what this movie's about. They're after the shock effect. And basically, for those of you that don't know, she's essentially raped by the woods.
Yep.
The trees and vines pull her down and have their way with her. And it's killer. It's a killer scene. You've also got all the trees falling as it's chasing her, too.
Yeah, which was literally running through there were no dolly tracks. There was no comfortable.
And she was barefoot and running through the woods. Ooh.
Yep. And I could understand why all the ladies said, I'm going back home to Michigan, just because it was a rough shoot. In the picture, she's wearing some of the scleratics. It took them like 4 or 5 minutes to even get them in and get them comfortable. And they literally could only wear those for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, they were so big it cut off the oxygen to their eyes.
Yeah, and they were thick. They were like glass, too. So it was like putting something big and huge in your eyeballs. And it hurt, and it was uncomfortable a lot of times. And they're wearing thin garments or nightgowns and stuff like that. So it was very cold, too. There was another shot that I remember favorites, and that's, again, later on when the Scotty character is looking out the window and just the way Sam shoots it. So when Scotty looks to his left, the camera moves around here and you look all the way down the cabin. And then he turns and looks toward the camera and the camera moves all the way and you see what he sees.
It does the opposite of what he's doing. Yes.
And it was just a shot I had never seen before. I thought was really cool, was really different. He does a lot of that real with shaky cam, that like trying to get the keys and undo the front door in the panic. And the camera's going from really high to really low across the grass and then up over the car and then down the ground again. And it's just this very predatory, prowling, scary, frenetic. You go, oh my gosh, oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's like the woods have eyes and they're watching you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the point, that it comes to life.
Another scene would be the "We're gonna get you" scene.
Oh yeah.
With
See,
Linda.
just creepy. Yeah. Yeah.
She does the childlike song. It precedes Nightmare on Elm Street, but it's very similar in a way to Nightmare on Elm Street. That would be a good key, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she licks the knife too. She licks the
Oh, that's when she
Kandarian
does
dagger.
that stupid move, though. I hate that. Every time you bring it up, it makes me mad.
Yeah. Yeah, there is no reason for her to flip the knife around that
She
way.
flips the
except-
knife around so that she can be stabbed in the back. And it is so choreographed. It is so obvious. Every time I see it, it makes me mad.
And it was
So
one
bad
of those.
Sam. Bad Sam.
And there's a great story with that because they're shooting it and they're getting ready to shoot it. And they're asking Sam, how does this work? And his basic answer is, well, she gets stabbed in the back. Well, how? She's holding it like this.
Well,
Can she
she'll have
flip
to
it
turn
around? But why would she? Because we have to stab her. The end justifies the means.
Well, and why show it? That's what makes it so obvious. If he would have maybe just cut away and then cut back and it's held differently, you would have never seen her go and make a big elaborate staging of it being flipped around so that she can stab herself in the back. It's just stupid. Anyway, that's my one gripe with this movie.
One of the scenes I always remember is one of the biggest ones we shot like the second day I was working on set. And it's the scene where Scotty comes back. Scotty leaves and he's going to get to the car and find a way across the bridge, do
The
something.
woods, they're alive.
Right. And there's a great jump scare where you open the door, nobody's there, and suddenly he jumps out at Bruce and he's all hurt and he takes him to the sofa and they're sitting there talking and da-da-da. But it took us like 3 hours to do all of his makeup because he has literally a broken wrist, which, folks, for trivia, that is a KFC chicken leg bone.
Like a
that we
chicken leg
attached-
bone.
we attached to the makeup. And he has these tubes that are going out his mouth and up into his nose so that he can take the blood in and then squirt it and it'll come out his nose for later on. But it was just really cool to...
He has a stick in his leg, too, like a
Yes.
branch.
And it was cool to just do all the makeup with him and then shoot it. And then later on, 2 years later, see that scene and go, yes, that I remember now. Oh, yeah, it looks good. so I always have an affinity for that because that's one of the first big scenes we shot.
Yeah.
A lot of our scenes were pickups, like all the little stuff dangling in the shed and Bruce coming in and just looking around at everything. All
Right.
that.
Any other scenes?
No, all of them are good. Watch it. It's great. It'll scare you.
Yeah, yeah. The only other thing I can think of that bears mentioning maybe is the stop animation scene where all of a sudden the book gets burnt and it slows them, it stops them, and they start to deteriorate and rot away. And he does it in stop motion because I guess he didn't have the money to do practical for something that elaborate.
And all of that was done in post. So part of Bruce mortgaging his family's farm and house to afford it was because they had to do all of the basement stuff was shot in Michigan. All the stop animation was shot in Michigan. And you can actually tell for the cabin, there was no basement in that cabin. We dug a big hole in the ground and put a trap door on top of it. And there was a ladder that you could climb up and out of it.
Yeah,
But-
and that's basically where Ellen was the majority of the time.
Yep, in a hole in the ground with white sclerotic contact lenses and had a huge makeup on her face.
Right.
Yeah.
Right there.
And you can actually see the gap. You can actually see the difference in the shot where Bruce walks, where Ash comes downstairs, and the ceiling is totally different than the earlier shot when they're all looking in the trapdoor.
Right. It's where the Hills Have Eyes poster is.
Yep.
And it's where the book is and the workbench and stuff.
I did in this time, after all these years, because this is what, the 40th anniversary, something like that? 79? This is, what are we in now? 79?
25.
So, it came out in 82. So, yeah.
I think it came out in 81.
81?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the date on IMDb. I knew it was filmed 2 years before that, though.
One of the guys that gave them, he was like a doctor or a lawyer or somebody who gave them a huge chunk of money to do it, said, Sam, I don't care what you do with the movie as long as the screen drips blood.
Yeah.
And that's why Sam put in the shot where the screen starts dripping blood and when they're in the basement. Yeah.
Actually, next year will be the 45th anniversary.
45th anniversary.
Yeah.
Yep. So there you go. Yeah.
I can talk about cast real quickly because none of these people are that well known other than Bruce Campbell. Bruce, of course, has gone on to do tons of stuff. He was in Ash versus the Evil Dead. We talked about him when we covered Bubba Hotep several seasons back, Don Coscarelli film. He went on to do the sequels to this movie. He is still a producer, and he and Sam are still producing Evil Dead movies, including Evil Dead Rise, which just came out a couple of years ago.
He did Briscoe County. I remember that. That was a pretty cool series.
It was a Western television show, yeah. He has a book out called If Chins Could Kill, I think, because he's got a big chin.
He plays it up.
Relatively nice guy from what I understand. Everyone seems to really like him.
He's great. Great guy. Always has been. Because we were like pen pals for a while. We would write to each other. This was pre-email. And we would catch up once a year or something like that on what they were. Because Sam and Rob went off and did Xena and Hercules and all of that. So, and Bruce helped with that. So
Ellen Sandwich plays Cheryl, his sister. All of these women came back and did Oz the Great and Powerful. I guess Sam just gave them small parts in that. Only one of them is really a working actress, and that's Betsy. But Ellen, to me, is the best thing in this movie. I think that all the way up until the current Evil Dead movie, I think she's still the best Deadite there ever was. I think she's phenomenal. I know all her lines. I just think she's so memorable as a zombie, Deadite, whatever. Anyway.
100%. She is so good. Yep.
And then Richard DeManicore played Scotty, and I'll be honest with you, he's the second reason that I hate this movie. If I had to pick another one other than the knife being turned around to stab someone in the back, it's him. I don't think he's a good actor at all. But anyway, he played Scott. Betsy Baker plays Linda. She has been working continuously since 2006. She has 107 credits, including Oz the Great and Powerful with Sam. But most of her stuff, I believe, is television.
Yep.
Teresa Tilley, who played Shelley, she has worked on and off in the business. She was also, like I said, in Oz the Great and Powerful.
I also found out she was a stand-up comic.
Oh.
She did stand-up for a while. Yep.
Okay. That's cool. And then when you get down to this list of fake, there's people like David Horton and Barbara Carey and Wendell Thomas, because they misspelled his name. We both know him as Thompson. And then Ted Raimi, Sam's brother, and Ivan Raimi.
Who have both gone on to do films.
Are Ted and Ivan both brothers? Are they both brothers?
Yeah.
Okay. But they were all working behind the scenes with David and others. Another celebrity that is in this movie is Bob Dorian from American Movie Classics. I don't know if you remember him or not. He does the voice on the reel-to-reel tape, reading the incantations and the history of the book and all that stuff. So, as far as awards, the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror gave it a win for Best Low Budget Film. I can completely
make
understand that.
I can too.
The Sickest Catalonian International Film Festival gave it 2 wins, one for special effects, Mr. Sullivan, who you mentioned, and it got the prize of International Critics Jury. That went to Sam. And this movie is on the 1001 movies you must see before you die.
Excellent. It should be.
It should be.
That's really interesting. Most people know the story that they couldn't find a distributor. Sam had worked on this movie for over a year and a half to get it done and was taking it to all of these studios, New Line, all these major studios, and everybody was turning it down, saying either too gory, too silly, too stupid, no, don't like it. A friend of his, I forgot the name of it, but it was a guy that ended up being like an investor and or a producer. I can't remember the actual story, but they persuaded him to take it to Cannes. He took it to the Cannes Film Festival. It got a Palme d'Or. It was hugely popular. They stood and applauded and all that. And Stephen King said that it was the most ferociously scary or what?
I misquoted it earlier. The actual quote is the most ferociously original horror film of the year. And I used to have that poster in my bedroom where he had the quote on the poster. It's actually right here, this poster.
Yeah. Sam came back and the phone was ringing off the hook. The studio saying, we want to distribute your movie. Stephen King loves it, blah, blah, blah. So he could basically write his own deal, which was great. And that helped propel him. Again, like we said, Sam left this, went on to end up doing Hercules, Xena, Spider-Man. Rob went off and...
He did Darkman, too.
He did Darkman. Rob went off with him. They shot a bunch. Rob ended up marrying Xena. So
he married Lucy Lawless. And actually, I forgot, he did a movie called Crime Wave after this. I've never seen it.
They both did. Sam directed and Rob produced. Not very good. It's a comedy.
No one.
The reason that we are called fake shimps in it is because Sam is obsessed with the Three Stooges, loves the Three Stooges, everything else, and that spills over into, especially you see it in Army of Darkness, in Crime Wave, in some of the stuff in Spider-Man. But there's...
Are you talking about Three Stooges humor?
Yeah, he likes...
It's all in the second Evil Dead movie, too.
Okay.
All the slapstick stuff with Bruce breaking plates on his head and fighting his hand and stuff. Yeah,
all that stuff. So, yeah.
So that's casting and awards. Did you want to go any more trivia before we move on to keys?
Just a couple of ones that I have. Just for those of you who love film, we recently this season did Super 8, which reminded me of when I was a kid shooting Super 8 movies. Sam was originally planning to shoot this in Super 8, but was talked into because they were so good at it. They've been doing it for all their movies and everything else, but was talked into using 16 millimeter, and that's why he had to have Phil there because he didn't know 16 millimeter very well. And so Phil was the cameraman who shot it all, but they had to drive to Knoxville every other day to deliver the negatives and pick up the dailies to watch. And that's, again, this was pre-digital, everybody. So they were having to take the film, ship it off to Nashville or Atlanta, get it developed, have it come back in 2 days, then look at it all to see what worked, what didn't work, what they had to reshoot, what was terrible and they didn't like at all. So that added to the production schedule and also added to the frustration of it. So,
And Knoxville's 45 minutes away.
from Morristown. So yes.
I've got a bunch of trivia, but I'm not going to read it because some of it we've already talked about as far as the cabin. I read this whole story about Germany banning the movie. Have you read about that?
Yeah, and wasn't it also on the list of the...
It was Video Nasty.
Video Nasties?
In England, it was like one of the first ones in the early 80s that got banned. But the thing in Germany was weird because it's like it's been banned until, it says not until 2016 was the first uncut version of the movie finally made legally available in Germany. This movie has been banned in Germany since until 2016. That's crazy.
It might hurt the impressionable German youth.
I guess. It was the biggest selling VHS release of its year in the UK and the first film labeled as a video nasty, as we just mentioned, and banned. Even though it was that popular. That's hilarious.
I've got some special effects trivia. So there's a scene where Ash reaches out into the mirror and his hand goes into the mirror and back. That's just a kiddie pool. They just filmed it on his side on the ground. It's just a kiddie pool that he used. All the glass that you see breaking in this movie is real glass. There's no sugar glass. There's no plasticine or any of that. It's real glass. If you see a shotgun go off, it's a real shotgun.
It's a real shotgun.
Yeah. So yes, there's that. The chainsaw is a real chainsaw, and it does have a blade on it, and it is really going. The only time we took the blade off was for the close-up reverse over her neck, because then it's just spinning and you hear it. It was a really cool effect. So when Cheryl reaches up, or I think it's Betsy, reaches up and grabs Bruce and scratches all the way down through his pants leg and blood comes out and everything else. The way they did that was Bruce actually, because the effects guy that I was working with, Tim, had already left by then. So we were just doing our own effects too. So like I was applying the masks for Barbara when she's being Betsy. But he ripped up his pants leg, and then we would cover it with latex and mud, and more latex and mud, and more latex and mud. So if you look at it on the film, you see this mud in a very convenient spot on his leg, which works because he's been digging graves, of course. So his leg would be muddy. But that way she could just reach up and literally tear through the latex and pull down. And it looked like she was ripping through the material and his leg at the same time.
Yeah.
And he has a 1-inch tube in his mouth going all the way down to his leg, pants leg to the bottom, so he could blow the blood out.
Blood. Yeah. That's funny.
And you see behind you, you've got Bruce with to me, that is an Evil Dead thing that I've seen in so many movies since then
with the eyes.
With the eyes are clear.
The eyes are always clear because they can't see if they're covered in blood. Yes.
Yeah. Or they're stuck together because his eyes would end up getting stuck together because it's Cairo syrup and it would dry or freeze really quickly and everything. And we would take ashes from the fireplace and spread them all over the floor where the blood is so you wouldn't stick to it as bad.
That's funny.
So
I have a question just because I don't live in Morristown anymore.
Yeah.
But when I lived in Quail Hollow around the corner from where that was shot, even after the movie was shot, we used to walk down there and take friends to see the cabin. Or even after that, when it was burned down, we would still go down there. Can you still go down there? Or is there an apartment complex or something built there now?
No, you can still go down there.
You can? So it's not got anything on it?
No, the ravine is still there, but there's no chimney anymore. It's fallen down, and then people have taken bricks from it and everything else. The last time I was there was probably like 5 or 6 years ago, and part of the roof was still there, and
it's
few
just
of the
all
bricks.
Torn down.
But yeah, it's all torn down.
Does Thompson still own that property?
No.
Okay.
Another guy owns. I think the farmer right beside it ended up purchasing it and buying it because he also put up all these no trespassing, get out of here, I don't want kids coming down here to party anymore.
What I remember the most is when you see that opening shot of them after they've gone across the bridge and it gets quiet and you see them driving down this little grassy way. That's what I remember. And I think there was a gate. Wasn't there a gate up there?
There's a gate
that
at
you
the
would
road.
go through first. Yeah.
And when you see that shot, that's the first one you see is that because Sam was standing on the hood of another car to actually shoot the car as it went down and follow it.
And you can see the cabin in the distance as they're pulling up. Yeah.
Yeah, but it takes a while. It was a scary walk every night. Going down to the cabin. It was scary. It got spooky because you couldn't park down there because Sam didn't want any other cars in the background or anything else. So you parked up on the road and carried all the equipment down and walked down. and everything else. Another reason why a lot of times they would just stay at the cabin because they didn't want to walk all the way back up the hill and drive over to the house and then have to come back in a couple hours.
Yeah.
So we would just camp out there. But so other things you see, like there is no hallway in that cabin. That cabin is an L shape. It's the big room and then it's the 3 bedrooms. And that's the original cabin. It didn't have a hallway that went to the 3 bedrooms and it didn't have a kitchen. And so when they're in the kitchen celebrating near the beginning, you see the tarp wall. It's just like the bathroom was created for, because there was no bathroom in this cabin.
It doesn't even look like a room. It looks like you said tarps.
And that's literally what it is. It's a bathtub and tarps because they had to make the bathroom because it had an outhouse. There was no bathroom there.
Right, right.
So, yep. Another one of the wonderful modern conveniences to shooting that was there was no bathroom.
Yeah.
So,
And the only car allowed on set was that Delta 88 in the background there, which has been in pretty much every one of Sam's movies ever since.
I think all but one it's been in, I think. It was even in Multiverse of Madness.
It was in The Quick and the Dead, too. They dismembered it or something and turned it into something else.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, Keys.
I think it would be hard-pressed to not have a gajillion keys of people that were influenced by Sam and this movie. And we keep saying Sam. It's not just Sam. It was the whole crew and the group and Bruce and everybody.
It was a group effort.
But it was Sam's overall vision for it, so he gets a lot of the credit for it. But Cabin Fever, Eli Roth in general, Cabin in the Woods, which is Joss Whedon. Both of those, I think, were heavily influenced and obviously make referential statements to this movie, even down to some of the shots and some of the structure that Eli Roth does in Cabin Fever is very similar to Evil Dead.
I have The Exorcist, which we had already mentioned, because the demons in this are very much like Reagan as far as spouting off craziness. But I've also got The Day the Earth Stood Still because of the Klaatu Barada Nikto.
Klaatu Barada Nikto.
Yeah, doesn't he say that on the tape?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think he does.
If not, it's in the second film because I know I heard it somewhere.
Well, and I would also go to say
I think
that
they do it in Army of Darkness too. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. But
no, I would go on to say The Exorcist is an influence too because of how visceral that movie was, and that's what Sam wanted with this. He wanted audiences to run away from it or to be banned in Germany or whatever.
Right.
I also think you should mention Chainsaw because Sam mentioned that Chainsaw was a huge influence on him. So it's obviously true that you see it in this, that no holds barred. We're going to cut people up. We're going to splash blood on people's faces.
Well, it's also the fact that there is a chainsaw in it, and there's the basement room where all those weird, or is it the shed? No, I think it's the shed outside where all the weird things are hanging, kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, all the tools and stuff like that. Yep. Hitchcock would be there just because you do see Sam and Rob in a cameo in this. They're the two rednecks beside the road in the opening sequence. So that's a key influence there. Three Stooges, of course, is a huge key because it influenced Sam through most of his career, but definitely through this and some of the Bruce stuff.
I have our podcast, we've talked in the past where Johnny Has the Keys was a line I lifted from Night of the Living Dead, but almost every promo we've ever done, you'll hear the sample of Join Us.
Yeah.
Join Us, which comes from this movie, for those of you that don't know.
I've got Nightmare on Elm Street because at one point they're watching Evil Dead in Nightmare on Elm Street.
They are. You're absolutely right. And then I put it also because of that scary song that Linda sings.
Yep.
I have Lovecraft because they actually refer to the book as the Necronomicon, which was created by Lovecraft in his works way prior.
And I think the narration actually says the old ones at one point when he's talking about it. I think you're right. That's a great one. I've got Duel because of the way they shoot the car and the bridge scene and everywhere else is very Duel inspired.
It is. That you mentioned it. I have Alien because there are times where these demons actually spew milk instead of blood.
Oh, yeah. True.
And I read that Sam did that so that there would be a variety, I think, and
Yeah,
not
he wanted the
just
contrast.
blood. Yeah, exactly.
I've got The Thing because
Yeah.
the scene where she's going, I'm all right now. I won't hurt. I want out. It reminds me of the whole I won't hurt anybody kind of Blair in the cabin.
Blair locked away. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of blood, I've got Amityville Horror because of when the blood is coming out of the light sockets and like the plug outlets. It's
Totally
very
good.
Amityville Horror, which came out in '79.
Yeah.
What else?
I've got an anti-key, but it's like this was also a challenge to the horror genre because in this movie it's the women who are actually terrorizing the man rather than the opposite. Even though this is graphic rape with Cheryl, it's mostly the women that are possessed first and are doing all the killing.
And Cheryl becomes the primary antagonist too.
Yeah. Totally true.
They have since, I don't know if you knew this, they've found a life again on the convention circuit. They are known as the Ladies of the Evil Dead. And those three women go and make appearances at conventions now as well.
Yeah, of course. Big key for this. One of the editors that helped Sam edit this for a few months was Joel Cohen, who
I didn't know
with
that.
his brother ended up becoming the Coen brothers.
Right.
He was an editor on this movie.
And that,
So I don't know
for
if
you
that's
folks
a
that don't
key
know,
or
that's Fargo and a lot of other stuff that's very popular.
Big Lebowski and
Yeah.
Raising Arizona and all of those came from the Coen brothers. And they're still friends. Frances McDormand, Sam, all of them are still friends and know each other and all grew up in Michigan and all that. So
This is, I'm going to say verbatim, there's a ripped poster of The Hills Have Eyes visible
Yep.
in this movie. Ostensibly, this was reference to a ripped poster for Jaws that appeared in The Hills Have Eyes. Sam and others interpreted that it was Wes Craven suggesting that Hills was much more frightening than Jaws. So he was saying that their film was more scary than The Hills Have Eyes.
There you go.
It was like a one-up putting pieces of this poster in there. I thought it
Each
was
one's
funny.
going to get scarier.
Right. I also have William Castle. I don't remember this. I remember seeing a helicopter, but according to the IMDb, it said Sam had ambulances at standby at premieres. Maybe it wasn't the Morristown premiere. Maybe it was a premiere somewhere else.
Yeah, because they had a premiere in Morristown, then they had another world premiere in Detroit, where they're from in Michigan.
And maybe that's where the ambulances were. And that's very William Castle to try to scare up business.
Yeah.
Funny.
And I think in general, just guerrilla filmmaking, I think the myth of Evil Dead and how it was made and Bruce on the circuit and in his books and in interviews and the ladies and everything talking about what a struggle it was to shoot and how difficult it was, blah, 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 but the end product is worth it and it's great. I think that has influenced so many filmmakers to grab the camera and go, especially now that everybody has a camera in their pocket and can go and do it. I think that's inspired a lot of people to go film those horror movies. And we've said the sequels, but there's also been a reboot. This whole franchise is reborn again lately.
Oh, I'm not through with Keys.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we didn't mention Batman and all those Scotch angles.
True.
You see,
that's what he
like that
did
one
for that.
behind me. Yeah. But also in 2003, Evil Dead, the musical, debuted in Toronto and moved off Broadway in 2006. I've never seen it, but I'm very curious.
I have read the script and heard the music, and it's more Evil Dead Army of Darkness than it is Evil Dead.
Okay.
So it's played for laughs the whole time. Like they just call Betsy a whore the entire time because she's going to the woods with this guy who's friends with her brother. It's just very offensive for being campy offensive. Does that make sense? It's kind of like a Roger Waters version of a musical.
Okay. Yeah. That's not what I'm looking for. But I guess with a musical, it could be different. But I'd rather have horror in my horror movie. Actually, Sam Raimi said that when Ash carries Linda out to bury her, that he wanted those flowing robes to be reminiscent of Hammer films,
Yeah. Yeah.
which makes perfect sense to me. He also pointed to George Romero as inspiration for this movie, especially using 16 millimeter in a small budget and a single location,
Yep.
which makes
All very
perfect sense.
perfect
Also,
sense.
especially for why I like it so much. And then I saw this movie the other day. This movie is absolutely bonkers crazy. And it is so obvious that Sam got his ideas from it for this film. It's called Equinox, and it came out in 1970.
Oh, okay.
I caught it on Turner Classics. It is a strange, strange movie, but there is a book, and it makes things happen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I highly recommend you watch it just for that alone. You'll be like, oh my God, Sam saw this movie. You can tell.
I was trying to think of other, because there have been so many films that where a book comes to life or reading the book casts the spell or what, especially when it comes to magic, not so much demons and stuff, but
Well, this conjures demons, and there is stop animation in it, a la Harryhausen like stuff. So you'll be like, oh my God, this is crazy. So
I
anyway,
vaguely remember the title. So yeah.
yeah. But that's all I have. I'll stop yammering.
No, it's great. Yeah, I've got like tons and tons and tons of other stories and stuff like that, which I might put into another blog or do something. We could go on and talk about the fact that it is in our DNA.
I mean, I'll do some lines for you right now. Soon you will all be like us. And who will there be to lock you in a cellar? It's your sister Cheryl.
I mean, it's just, if you haven't seen, I used to equate this movie to, I've gone to three thoughts at once. I have a better appreciation of this movie now, I think, not just because of the production elements involved, but also it's just aged well with me. There was a point there where I was saying, I've seen scarier horror movies. I've seen better makeup effects. I've seen better acting in other movies. So this, to me, I used to equate it and say this was like the JC haunted house of horror movies. Because, yeah, they're using fake blood and there's a lot of it. And yeah, that's probably not the most realistic special effect, but it's still scary and still works. And no matter, even if you know the gag, I know going around the corner of this JC haunted house that somebody's going to jump out and it's still going to scare me. That embrace of a type of horror movie. But now, the more I look at it in this last rewatch, he does put you in that cabin, in that place. You feel isolated. You feel alone. You feel just like Ash does of what the hell is going on and how do I fix it?
Well, and the fact that it's original. Even though it's a similar story to other horror movies, this movie is ferociously original, to paraphrase Stephen King. And when you see the camera work and the sound editing and the effects, it's clearly unique and of its own. I would probably put this up in like the top 10 horror movies of all time.
That's great. See, that's high praise coming from a horror fan like you.
Right.
So,
yeah. Why do you think I use sound bites from it all the time? It's very similar to Night of the Living Dead to me. It's just classic. It's iconic. It was made in our hometown.
There you go.
Crazy. And you worked on it.
I did. That's what Tim and I think. We would love to know what you guys think. Did you like Evil Dead? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it if you didn't? Well, the counter arguments are just as good sometimes for us. So we would love to hear from you. Also, you could always help us out by just going and giving us a review on iTunes or anywhere else. Commenting on it helps us find other people. Sharing all of this with your friends and sometimes with your enemies. If you don't like it, it works too. If you do want to support us, we would love to have you as Patreons and as patrons on Patreon. We have some free stuff over there, but we also have some tiered programming and episodes and things that are really good. And we could always use your support. It helps us in defray the cost of stuff like websites and microphones and stuff like that. And we've been doing it. We're winding up the season. We only have a few more episodes this season.
3.
And then we'll be jumping into the next one, which we're already excited about, and I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
But Tim, if you can avoid the Kandarian daggers and all the demons, next week will be
The chicken bones.
Hopefully we'll be somewhere else. And,
No, I think we're just going to stick around for a while.
oh, great. Okay, great. We'll just be a little bit more scary next week.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think
so
we
if you're
need some more Evil Dead.
If you're a horror fan and like Evil Dead, you might want to come back and see us next week too.
Yeah.
All right, Tim, until then,
I'll see you then. All right. Bye.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the